Okay, let's do some yoga flow, vinyasa flow. Come onto your mat. We'll start slow in stillness, coming to the breath. So come on down onto your back. Decide how you want the legs. You can either bring the knees together, feet wide, or just feet resting on the mat could be nice. If you really want to extend the legs out in front of you, you could do that too. Arms down by the sides or hands on the body could be nice. Usually it's left hand on the heart, right hand on the belly, or two hands in one place. So 2 hands on the heart, 2 hands on the belly. You can see what's offering you the most comfort. Close the eyes. Take a deep breath in through the nose. Exhale out through the mouth. 2 more like that. Deep breath in. Exhale out through the mouth. Last one like that. Deep breath in through the nose. Exhale out through the mouth. This time, in through the nose. Back out through the nose. Keep going on your own with this breath, your Ujjayi breath. Feeling that switch start to flip in the head so that you can get into your practice, that right state of mind. Making some space. Pushing everything else aside. Blink open the eyes, interlace the fingers back behind the head, rest the head in the hands. Let's lift the legs all the way up. So feet are over the hips. Take an inhale right where you are. Exhale, lift the upper body up and away from the mat. Inhale back. Exhale up. Elbows stay wide. Inhale back. Exhale up. Inhale back. Exhale up. Try not to move the legs. Inhale back. Exhale up. Inhale back. Exhale up. One more like this one. Inhale back. Exhale up. Stay up. Bend the knees. Twist to the right, bicycles. Extend that left leg. Come back through to center. Extend the right leg. Twist to the left. Back through to center. Over to the right, back to center, over to the left. Back to center, you can keep doing what we're doing, or you could extend the legs out in front of you doing bicycles this way. Right knee comes in, twist to the right, then you come back to center, twist to the left. If it's too hard, go back to where we just were with the knees over the hips. Sometimes this is a good option. Sometimes it isn't, but it's nice to know that you have another lever to make bicycles a little more challenging if you're in the mood for that. One more each side. Reach the arms out in front of you, legs extended, Ardha Navasana for 3, 2, 1. Set it all down. Legs can be extended out in front of you, head resting on the mat. Feeling that fire that you've built in the body already. Start to walk the feet in. Let's cross the right ankle on top of the left thigh. Come in to thread the needle. Maybe the legs come in closer. Right foot is flexed. That's the one you can see. Set the feet back down onto the mat. Left ankle, right thigh, thread the needle this side. Legs might come in toward the body. Maybe that right foot stays down on the mat. Trying to find where your gentle hip opening is, not going as deep as you can possibly go. Plenty of poses ahead to get the hips open. Feet come back down to the mat, roll over to your right side, use the hands to bring yourself up to seated, and let's come forward to hands and knees, tabletop. So as you come forward to hands and knees, setting up for cat-cow, on an inhale, reach the heart forward, lift the tail. On the exhale, round the whole spine, chin in toward the chest. Keep going at your own pace. Follow the cycle of your own breath. One more, forward and back. Back to a neutral spine. Walk the hands out in front of you so the hands are ahead of the shoulders. Turn the index fingers so they're either pointing straight forward or they're going out a little bit toward the corners of the mat. Fingers are spread evenly. Tuck the toes. Lift the hips up and back. Downward facing dog. So find some movement here. You can pedal out the feet. Or lift the hips up high and the heels high. From downward facing dog, glide forward to plank pose. Stack the shoulders over the wrists. Stretch the legs back behind you. Fire up the whole body. So we just use the core. It might be a little easier to find at this point. Squeezing that in all the way around you, trying to also squeeze the inner thighs, incorporating that as part of the core. Chest is reaching forward a little bit. Gaze is down more toward the top of the mat or ahead of it, depending on where you are on your mat. And you're still with that same breath we started with. You should be able to hear it going in and out through the nose, feeling the breath move up and down the back of the throat. And you'll start to lower down to the mat. You could bring the knees down to the mat or shift forward onto the toes, bend the elbows, start to lower all the way down, landing on your stomach. So tops of the feet come to the mat. Let's bring the hands out wide. So bring the hands off of the mat, come up onto the fingertips. The elbows lift, and you want the elbows to be underneath the wrists, elbows above the wrists. Press into the tops of the feet, come up for a wide cobra. So tailbone points back, chest is lifted, collarbone spread, and then exhale, release. We're doing that same thing 2 more times. Inhale, lift, wide cobra. Exhale, release. One more. Inhale up. Exhale, set it back down. Hands to the mat outside the rib cage. Come back up to hands and knees. Child's pose. Big toes together. Forehead comes down. Downward facing dog. Look forward at the hands, tuck the toes underneath you, lift the hips up and back. For this downward facing dog, let's widen the feet. So bring the feet more toward the outer edges of the mat. So you're taking a wider stance with the legs, and then push back with the hands, the arms, so that the hips lift up a little bit more. And you might be able to get the heels down to the mat. You're still lifting the hips up so you get that opening in the backside of the legs. Walk the hands back toward the feet. So it's a wider legged forward fold at the back of the mat. Once you get there, you can either clasp opposite elbows in front of you. If your shoulders are open enough, you could interlace the fingers behind the back and let the knuckles fall back behind the head. If we have tight shoulders, this is a big ask and maybe too big. So then you would just come back to clasping opposite elbows in front of you. Wherever you are, shoulders are moving toward the hips, head's moving down toward the mat. So the neck feels really long. And then switch whatever you have. So one finger over if the fingers are interlaced, or switching the grip of the elbow so the other forearm's in front. Try to get a little heavier in the balls of the feet, lighter in the heels. Bring the hands down to the mat. So fingertips underneath the shoulders. So you're lifting the chest up halfway, heels in, toes out, coming into a version of a yogi squat. It's still early, so maybe the heels stay lifted and you walk the hands forward. If your hips are open enough, you can keep the heels down. Then you can bring the hands together in front of the heart, or maybe you take a wider stance with the feet if that helps. Chest is lifted if you're doing that. All those muscles around the hips are engaged. So don't feel like you're letting that go and just letting everything sink. And then lift the pelvic floor. So that's also not released. It's going up. Crown of the head rises up. And if the hands are down in front of you and the heels are lifted, that's fine. You're just keeping a long spine. All right. Bring the hands down wherever you are, straighten the legs, heel toe the feet back to hip width distance. On an inhale, come up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, forward fold. Same thing 2 more times. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Last one, inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold, walk the hands forward back to your downward facing dog. Step the right foot up between the hands, coming into a runner's lunge. So fingertips can be underneath the shoulders, or maybe you have hands on blocks. Chest is reaching forward. Trying to keep this right knee stacked over the right ankle, not ahead of it. Hands come down to the mat, step back, downward facing dog. Left foot steps up between the hands, runner's lunge on this side. Feet are still hip width distance apart. Take your time finding your way into it. Try to keep the upper back long so there isn't any rounding there, which might mean the hands go up a little bit higher, which is great for coming up onto the fingertips or hands on blocks, especially for your first lunge. Hands down to the mat, step back, downward facing dog. Bending the knees, look forward to the top of the mat, walk the feet up to the hands. So take several steps to get there. Try to keep the hands down as long as you can. They'll lift at a certain point. On an inhale, rise up halfway. Exhale, fold. This time all the way up. Circle the arms all the way up to standing. Hands come together overhead, down in front of the heart. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold, bend the knees, hands to the mat, step back to plank pose, lower down halfway chaturanga, all the way down to the mat, tops of the feet down, take cobra, traditional cobra. Exhale, release, downward facing dog, either plank or you could take hands and knees to plank and then back to downward facing dog. 2 more breaths here. Bend the knees, look forward to the top of the mat, walk, step, bring the feet up between the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Circle the arms all the way up to standing. Hands come together overhead, down in front of the heart. Surya A. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, hands down to the mat, step back to plank pose, lower down halfway chaturanga. Inhale up for your back bend, maybe up dog. Exhale back, downward facing dog. Bend the knees, look forward to the top of the mat, walk, step, hop, feet come up between the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Circle the arms all the way up. Hands come together at the very top, down in front of the heart. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Bend the knees, hands to the mat, back to plank pose, lower down halfway chaturanga. Inhale up for your back bend. Exhale back, downward facing dog. Bend the knees, look forward, bring the feet up. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Circle the arms all the way up to standing. Hands come together overhead, down in front of the heart. One more cycle. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhaling up halfway. Exhale, hands to the mat, back to plank pose. Lower down halfway. Inhale up for your back bend. Exhale back, downward facing dog. Widen the feet so the feet are more toward the outer edges of the mat. Walk the hands back toward the feet. Then this time, heels in, toes out. You're coming back into Malasana Yogi Squat. So bring the hips down, same options as before. You can even have a block underneath the hips. And we'll be coming back to this quite a bit today. So if you even want to move a block toward the back of the mat, that could be a good idea too. But chest is lifted. Use those elbows if they're inside the knees to open up the knees, keeping them in line with the toes, which is also opening up the hips. Hands come down to the mat, straighten the legs, point the toes forward, heel toe the feet back to hip width distance. Inhale up halfway. Walk the hands forward back to your downward facing dog. Right leg lifts up and back, three-legged dog. Step the right foot all the way through, up between the hands. Right hand inside the right foot. Walk the hands over to the left. So you're facing the side of the mat. Heels in, toes out, not as wide as you can go. Bend the left leg, straighten the right. So hands go over to the left leg. Let's keep both feet flat on the mat. Chest is reaching forward. It's a high skandasana. So you're not going as low as you can here. Opening up that left hip, inner right leg. Shift back to center, toes point straight forward. Bring the fingertips underneath the shoulders. Put a bend in the knees, float the hands up to the hips, come up to standing. Once you get to standing, angle on the left toes, turn the right toes all the way out, reverse warrior. Right arm reaches up and back. You're bending that right knee, reaching away from it. Right forearm, right thigh, left arm reaches up and over, extended side angle, Parsva Konasana. Chest opens up. If you feel like that outer right hip is going way out to the right, bring it in. And then get as long as you can on the right side of the torso. Look down at the mat. Bring the hands to the mat, step back, downward facing dog. Vinyasa if you want, or stay here in downward facing dog. It's up to you. Left leg reaches up and back, three-legged down dog. Step that left foot all the way through, up between the hands. Left hand inside the left foot. Walk it over to the right. Turn the toes to point to the side of the mat. Then heels in, toes out. Maybe halfway, maybe less. Bend the right leg, straighten the left. Keep the chest lifted, fingertips underneath you. Both feet flat on the mat. Right knee and right toes, same direction, which is why you don't open up the toes too much because the knee can't go very far. Come back to center, point the toes forward, little bend in the knees so you can bring the hands to the hips, rise up to standing, angle in the right toes, left toes turn out, reverse warrior, left arm reaches up and back. Left forearm, left thigh, right arm reaches up and over. Hands come down to the mat, step back, downward facing dog. Be happy here or take a vinyasa. Bend the knees, look forward to the top of the mat, step, walk, hop, feet come up between the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Come into chair pose, bend the knees, reach the arms up. Bring yourself all the way up to standing, hands come together, down in front of the heart. Let's do 2 rounds of Surya Namaskar B. Bend the knees, sit back, chair pose. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, bend the knees, hands to the mat. Vinyasa if you want on the way back to downward facing dog. Skip them whenever you want to. Right foot steps up between the hands. Seal that left heel down to the mat, arms forward and up, warrior 1. Stay here for a few breaths, get it set up. So at the next round, when you go a little faster, you have that memory in the body to tell you right where you need to be. Next exhale, hands come down to the mat, make your way back, downward facing dog, optional vinyasa. Left foot steps up between the hands, right heel spins down flat, Virabhadrasana 1 on your inhale, and then you stay here for a few breaths, set it up. One more inhale. Exhale, hands come back down to the mat, make your way back, downward facing dog. Bend the knees, look forward, lightly bring the feet up. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Bend the knees, sit back, chair pose. All the way up to standing, hands come together, down in front of the heart. Inhale, sit back, chair pose. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold, bend the knees, step back, down dog, vinyasa, you choose. Right foot steps up, warrior 1. On your exhale, hands come back down to the mat. You make your way back, downward facing dog. Left foot steps forward, warrior one on your inhale. And exhale, bring the hands down to the mat, make your way back, downward facing dog. Widen the feet. Doesn't need to be all the way to the outer edges of the mat. Walk the hands back toward the feet. Heels in, toes out, Malasana, yogi squat. Bring the hips down. Heels are working down toward the mat. If they're touching, then press into them. Bring the elbows inside the knees, lift the chest. And Mula Bandha, that pelvic floor energy lock all the way up through the crown of the head. Hands come down to the mat, straighten the legs, heel toe the feet back to hip width distance. Inhale up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Walk the hands forward back to downward facing dog. Trying to keep those heels descending down toward the mat. Right leg lifts up and back, three-legged down dog. Step the right foot all the way through, up between the hands. Right hand inside the right foot. Turn the toes to the left. Heels in, toes out slightly. Bend the left leg, straighten the right. Some version of Skandasana. If you want to go deeper, go deeper. That might mean that the right toes point up. But you can do that version that we just did and stay in that one as long as you want. Hands come down to the mat. Straighten the legs, point the toes forward, little bend in the knees, hands come up to the hips, press yourself up to standing. Angle in the left toes, turn the right toes all the way out, reverse warrior, right arm reaches up and back. Extended side angle, right forearm, right thigh, left arm reaches up and over. You could bring the right hand down inside the right foot if the hips are okay with that. They are pretty open. We've done several hip openings. So maybe you're up on fingertips, maybe your hand's on a block. This time, bring that left arm up, turn the left palm to face behind you, wrap the left arm behind the back, coming into a half bind. Skip the full bind, as tempting as it may be for some of you. Left arm stays behind the back. Reach the right arm up and back. Reverse warrior with the half bind, if your shoulder's okay with that. Then exhale, windmill the hands down to the mat. Make your way back, downward facing dog, with or without a vinyasa. Left leg reaches up and back. Step the left foot all the way through, up between the hands. Left hand inside the left foot, walk the hands over to the right. Heels in, toes out a little bit. Bend the right leg, straighten the left. Some version of Skandasana, side lunge. Hands come back down to the mat, shift back onto both legs, toes point forward, little bend in the knees, hands come up to the hips, pressing ourselves up to standing, angle in the right toes, turn the left all the way out, reverse warrior. Left forearm, left thigh, right arm reaching up and over. Parsva Konasana, maybe hand inside the foot. And on that top hand, the palms facing behind you, so the thumb is up and the pinky is down. Use that back leg just as much as you are the front leg. Maybe the right arm reaches up, you turn the right hand to face behind you, and you wrap the right arm behind the back, finding a shoulder opening on the right side shoulder and chest area. Fire up both legs, reverse warrior, maybe with the half bind. Deep lunge in the front knee, you're not here for long. Exhale, hands come down to the mat. Make your way back, downward facing dog, however you want to get there. Widen the feet. Walk the hands back toward the feet at the back of the mat. Heels in, toes out, some version of Malasana, yogi squat. So you can stay right here in your yogi squat. I'll give you another option. You can also play with crow pose if you want to play with an arm balance. Skip it if you're not into it. There's also a nice stretch. So I'll give you an in-between option for crow pose where you can still stay in the hips and stay off the hands. So if you're playing with crow pose, hands come down to the mat, straighten the legs. Bring the heels together. Your toes are already turned out. Then come up high onto the balls of the feet. Sink the hips down. Knees are wide. Lower the chest as low down as you can get. And this is your crow stretch. Arms out in front of you. Upper body's just like child's pose. It's like you're trying to get the head down toward the mat. If you want to play with the arm balance, keep the chest as low as possible. Just walk the arms back until you can get the knees up higher than the shoulders and the underarms. And then see if you can get the hands back even more. Look forward, index fingers point forward or out a little bit. Lift the hips up high, squeeze the knees in toward the body and push the torso out toward the knees at the same time. And then start to shift forward onto the toes, lift the belly, lift the pelvic floor. Maybe one foot lifts, maybe the other foot lifts, and you bring the feet up high toward the hips. Looking forward is key. Keep squeezing and lifting. Crow pose, Bakasana. If you're in it, set the feet back down. Malasana, yogi squat. Hands come together right in front of the heart. Hands down to the mat, straighten the legs, turn the toes to point forward, heel toe the feet back to hip width. Walk the hands forward to downward facing dog. Right leg lifts up and back. Step the right foot all the way through, up between the hands. Right hand inside the right foot. Walk the hands over to the left. Heels in, toes out. Bend the left leg, straighten the right. Skandasana, side lunge. Hands down. Back to center, toes point forward, little bend in the knees, hands to the hips, press yourself up to standing. Angle in the left toes, turn the right all the way out, reverse warrior. Extended side angle, hand inside the foot or forearm to thigh, left arm reaches up and over, get long in the left side of the body and the right side of the torso. Left arm reaches up to the sky, turn that left hand to face behind you, wrap the left arm behind the back, maybe a full bind if you feel like it's there. You can reach underneath the right thigh with the right arm, see if the hands connect. You're still opening the chest toward the sky and keeping that deep lunge in the front leg. Right hand comes down. Keep that half bind, reverse warrior. Right arm reaches up and back. Your exit is hands coming down to the mat, downward facing dog with or without a vinyasa. Left leg reaches up and back. Step the left foot all the way through, up between the hands. Left hand inside the left foot. Walk the hands over to the right. Heels in, toes out. Right knee bends, left leg is straight. Skandasana. Hands come down in front of you, shift back onto both feet, pointing the toes forward. Bend the knees, hands to the hips, press up to standing, angle in the right toes, left toes out, reverse warrior. Left hand comes down inside the foot or forearm to thigh, right arm up and over, extended side angle. Right arm reaches up for side angle pose. Turn that right palm to face behind you. Wrap the right arm behind the back. Find your half bind. Stay here, or maybe you reach down underneath that left thigh. See if the hands connect. Keep the lunge. Keep the length in the spine as you open up across the chest. Left hand down, right arm stays behind the back, reverse warrior. Left arm reaches up and back. I know that left quad is burning. Windmill the hands down to the mat, make your way back, downward facing dog. Widen the feet, walk the hands back. Malasana, yogi squat. Turn the heels in, toes out. See where it is this time. This is our second to last one. Or it could be your last one, depending on where you go from here. So one more opportunity for crow pose. Skip it, or maybe you just do the crow stretch, which is nice. Hands down in front of you, straighten the legs, bring the feet together so the heels touch, toes turn out. Then lift the heels up as high as you can. Knees will bend, hips will come down. Walk the hands forward. Think child's pose in the upper body, like you're trying to get the head down toward the mat. So you feel that rounding of the spine, and then you hug the belly in. And this is what the upper body should feel like in your crow pose. Keep the chest this low. Just start to look forward. Walk the hands back, keeping the shoulders low. See if you can lift the hips and wiggle those knees up any higher. The higher, the better. Squeeze the knees, look way forward, shift forward so the weight is mostly in the hands, and then one toe at a time, 1 foot at a time, lift them, keep the gaze forward, lift the lower body from the inside. Feet lift. Back to your yogi squat. Set the feet back down, hands come together in front of the heart, lift the chest. Hands down to the mat, straighten the legs, heel toe the feet back to hip width, come up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana, walk the hands forward, Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Right leg lifts up and back. Step the right foot all the way through, up between the hands. Right hand inside the right foot. Walk it over to the left. Heels in, toes out, Skandasana. Bend the left leg, straighten the right. Hands down, shift back onto both feet, pointing the toes straight forward toward the side of the mat. Bend the knees, hands to the hips, coming up to standing. Angle in the left toes, turn the right all the way out, reverse warrior. Right arm reaches up and back. Right hand inside the right foot, maybe left arm up and over, extended side angle. Left arm reaches up, turn that left palm to face behind you, wrap the left arm behind the back, maybe a full bind. See if that's happening today. Right hand comes down, reverse warrior, maybe with the half bind. And exhale. Hands come down to the mat, make your way back, downward facing dog. Just the other side. Left leg reaches up and back. Step the left foot all the way through up between the hands. Left hand inside the left foot, walk it over to the right, heels in, toes out, bend the right knee, straighten the left. Skandasana side lunge or surfer's lunge. That's another popular name for it. Hands come down to the mat, straighten the legs, toes point forward, little bend in the knees, float the hands up to the hips, press yourself up to standing, angle on the right toes, turn the left out, reverse warrior. Left hand down inside the foot, right arm up and over. You're still welcome to keep that forearm to the thigh. Right arm reaches up, turn the right hand to face behind you, wrap the right arm behind the back, stay here or play with the full bind. Sometimes it happens on one side, not the other, so that's fine too. Right arm behind the back, left arm reaches up and back, reverse warrior. And windmill the hands down to the mat. Last vinyasa if you want it. Back to downward facing dog. Once you get to downward facing dog, take child's pose. Bring the knees down to the mat. Big toes together. Hips go back. Forehead comes down. Arms can go back behind you too. We did a lot of shoulder opening today, a lot of hip opening today. And you had a lot of opportunities for vinyasas. So if you did a bunch of them and the arm balance, probably a good idea to get the hands back behind you if the hips are low enough. Bring the hands underneath you, lift the head up. Let's come to seated on the mat, legs out in front of you. Scoot yourself forward. Come down onto your back, setting up for bridge pose. So walk the heels in, press into the feet, lift the hips up. Shoulders are open, so maybe it's easier to interlace the fingers underneath you. Could always grab the outer edges of the mat as an alternative. Make sure the back sides of the legs are working. So that's digging into the heels as if you're going to bring them in toward the body. And slowly release. Hips come back down to the mat. Rest here. Try not to counter pose. And we're coming back in. 2 more rounds ahead. You're welcome to do supported bridge if you'd like. Press into the feet, lift the hips up, interlace the fingers, get those shoulders underneath you so you can lift and spread the chest. Always looking up, never side to side. And slowly release. Hips come back down to the mat. Rest. Couple breaths here. If you want to go up in something bigger and that feels like a good, obvious option for you, you're welcome to take upward facing bow or Urdhva Dhanurasana or stick with bridge. I'm sticking with bridge, but I can talk you through the other one if you want to do it. Press into the feet, lift the hips up. If you're taking bridge, interlace the fingers underneath you. If you're taking a bigger pose, bring the hands back to the mat by the ears. Press into the hands to come up onto the top of the head. And then find even between the arms and the legs so you can press yourself up using both. And try to stack the shoulders over the wrists. Lengthen the whole spine and the front side of the body. Chin to chest if you're all the way up. Start to bring yourself back down. If you're in bridge, hips come back down to the mat. Let them be heavy. We'll all hug the right knee in toward the chest, leaving the left foot right where it is. Right foot comes down, left knee comes in toward the chest. Left foot comes down, roll over to your right side, use the left hand to bring yourself up to seated. And then from here, come to a cross-legged seat. Let's bring the left shin in front of the right, just so we're all doing the same thing. Shift side to side so you're even on the sit bones. And you're coming into Sukhasana. So that means shins are crossed in the middle. So not by the ankles, as best you can. So feet go a little bit wider, toes point forward, and your feet are more underneath the knees than they are the thighs. And then sit up as tall as you can, fingertips outside, underneath the shoulders, outside the mat. Start to open the chest to the left. Maybe you take the back of the right hand to this left thigh. Stay even in the hips, press up through the crown of the head, and start to gaze over that left shoulder, coming into your seated twist. Want to make sure that we get a good twist in here. We didn't really have one in our flow. So keep the body where it is. Just bring the gaze forward, feeling that release in the neck. Slowly unwind the hands, chest is facing forward. You can keep the legs just like this and fold forward in Sukhasana for your hip opening. If you feel like you want to play with double pigeon, you could take this left foot that's on the mat, bring it up so that the ankle's on top of the knee. Then that might show you if that right foot is too far back. If there's a gap between the left knee and the right ankle, a block or something, a blanket, pillow, whatever you have, fill that in. And then start to walk the hands forward, fold over the legs. You can always bring that left foot down if it's too much. So finding either Sukhasana or double pigeon. Double pigeon's a big hip opening, but we did a ton of squats today, side lunges, all kinds of deep hip opening along with the shoulders. So it may be available. And start to walk the hands in, coming back up to seated. If you're in double pigeon and this right foot's on top of the knee, bring it down so it's on the mat. Hands come back behind you. Separate the feet wide. Let's do some windshield wipers. We were in that one, that last hip opening for a minute, which is a longer hold. So give ourselves a little bit of a counter before we do everything on the other side. Okay, come back to your cross-legged seat, Sukhasana. So crossing at mid-shin, shifting side to side, getting the hips, sit bones underneath you, just right. Feet go forward, toes point forward. Maybe you take the right foot, bring it on top of the left knee. And you want, it's called fire log 2. So you want to make sure the shins are stacked, ankle to knee on both sides. So oh, sorry, you don't need to do double pigeon yet. That's a deep twist. So sorry, right foot comes down. Let's do the twist first. Open up the chest to the right. Bring the back of the left hand to that right thigh. if it's not too much, you can always bring the hand forward to the shin in front of you if it feels like too deep of a twist. Press into the sit bones, open the chest to the right, start to bring the gaze over the right shoulder. Feel that twist go all the way up through the spine. Crown of the head is lifting so you can hang on to that length. And you're definitely with that Ujjayi breath, deep inhales and matching the length of the exhale. This is our last twist of this practice. We're staying in this one a little bit longer. Leave the body where it is. Just bring the gaze back forward. Unwind the chest. Maybe stay in Sukhasana. Maybe take this right foot up on top of the left knee, possibly setting yourself up for double pigeon. It might work on one side, not the other. Fill in this space between the right knee and the foot if there is one. And start to fold forward over the legs wherever you are. Close the eyes, let the head and the neck go. Start to walk the hands back in. If you have that right foot up, bring it down to the mat. Bring the hands back behind you, lean back, separate the feet to the outer edges of the mat, and bring the knees side to side, windshield wipers. Then you'll come back to seated. This time legs are extended out in front of you, which should feel really nice after all that crossing of the shins. Sit up evenly on the sit bones. Reach the arms all the way up. Take an inhale and exhale forward, seated forward fold, Paschimottanasana. Make sure the hands touch somewhere, either on the body or on the mat outside the legs. Even blocks. Let the head and the neck go, but get long in the back side of the body. Try not to let it round. Rise back up to seated, coming into Shavasana, soles of the feet to the mat, scoot yourself forward, lie all the way down onto your back, extend the legs out in front of you. You're welcome to use props if you have any that you like to use for Shavasana. Something to cover the eyes could be really nice too. Let the toes turn out, palms face up. Option to bring the hands on the body if that seems like a better option. And then start to let go of the breath control. Allow the body to go back to breathing on its own. being still, but still feeling all of that activity inside the body, those poses still moving through you. Start to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Stretch the arms overhead. Wake yourself up again. Walk the feet in, bending the knees. Roll over to one side. Cradle the head on the arm. Keep the eyes closed. Use the hands. Bring yourself up to a comfortable seat on your mat. Sitting up tall. Bring the hands together in front of you, shoulders away from the ears. Maintain the lift of the chest. Start to bow the head. Honor and acknowledge your heart and your spirit, as well as everyone around you. Bring the head back up. Blink open the eyes. Namaste. Good work today. Thank you for joining and sharing your practice, either live or on the recorded version. I'll see you next week.